Hi, this is Bob Baker. Welcome to The Creative Entrepreneur. Before we jump into this latest interview, I just want to make sure that you don't miss any of the awesome interviews that I'm posting, nearly one every week. It's really easy to stay informed. You can get on the VIP email list. It's free, and I'll send you an email every time I post a new interview. Just go to DIYcareermanifesto.com, get on the email list, and you're set. And another cool perk to getting on the list is that I will also send you a big, fat, free sample of my new book called The DIY Career Manifesto. It's the unconventional guide to turning your talents and your know-how into a profitable business, just like a lot of the people that I interview. So get on the list, DIYcareermanifesto.com. And now on to this week's interview. Hello, it's Bob Baker back again with another episode of The Creative Entrepreneur. And you know, this show is all about inspiring creative people and just really entrepreneurial people in all fields. And I tell you what, my guest today does exactly that. I'm talking about Gigi Rosenberg. Hello, Gigi.
Hi.
It's great to see you again. We actually met a few years ago in the Chicago area for it was a conference called, which is a great title, called Self-Employed in the Arts, I believe. Which is, I guess it's geared for college students, but there were people of all types that who came. We sat at the same table and chatted about the idea. It was just an idea, I guess, you had for a book back then, right?
That's right. And I interviewed you about self-publishing.
That's right.
So I made sure I ended up at your table.
Awesome. So it was great to connect with you there. And I guess I must have got on your email list maybe during that conference, and your name keeps popping up. And so you were, and actually, this let me read us a little description. This is, I think, from just the very first paragraph of your About page at your website, which is at gigirosenberg.com. It says, Gigi Rosenberg is an author and coach to visual, literary, and performing artists, entrepreneurs, and other creative people. Her passions are writing, performing, and teaching others to find the words and voice to bring their ideas and work into the world. I mean, that you couldn't craft a more ideal guest for this show. It's just totally in alignment with the creative entrepreneur. So I know, I know you do coaching. You're a writer yourself. Your book is on fundraising. Is that right?
It's actually called The Artist's Guide to Grant Writing. It's It does cover fundraising in general, and all the stuff I write about can apply to fundraising. But it's specifically if you want to really write a great proposal, it's a perfect book for a creative project.
And that's not an easy task, the whole grant writing, fundraising, nonprofit sector thing.
It's not easy, but the truth is, one of the big things I talk about in the book is how much the process of writing a proposal and writing a grant actually helps you back in the studio when you're making your art. So it pays off even if you don't win the money in the end.
Cool. Now that's a very broad sort of overview of who you are and what you do. Why don't you give us a few more details about your background, all the pertinent stuff that would apply to creative entrepreneurs, and then we'll get into our groovy little list of questions here.
Sure. So I grew up in a family of visual artists. Both my parents were professional visual artists. So I kind of grew up thinking everybody made their living as an artist. But that's one of the reasons I had to become a writer. I just didn't, I needed to kind of do my own form of art. So I'm a writer, and I write memoir and essays and a little bit of fiction. Several years ago, I'm trying to remember the whole long story. I'm not even sure if it really matters. Oh, I know what it was. I sat on a committee where I was reading other people's grants, and I was part of the panel deciding who was going to win grants. And the grants were so poorly written, I was horrified, especially when the ideas were really good. Mm-hmm. So I suggested to this organization that I come in and lead some grant writing workshops. And I loved teaching because for me, teaching is kind of like a little performance. And as a writer, I love teaching good writing. And as a thinker, I love teaching how to think about something strategically and kind of put all the pieces together, especially when it was going to give birth to some incredible artwork. So that's how the workshops and the coaching got born. And then I decided I wanted to write a book. And then I met you and thought, I'm going to sit next to that guy because I want to learn about publishing.
Oh, good. I hope that was helpful. I know. Yeah.
Oh, it was. Yeah.
At the time, you were kind of trying to figure out whether you should go the self-publishing route or the traditional route. And I know you ended up going the traditional route, which is fine. Even though I'm a big proponent of the indie. Two of my books were traditionally published. but all the others are self-published, and actually my most profitable titles were the ones I put out on my own.
Yeah, you definitely make more money self-publishing if you can market, if the marketing you can do. But you got to do the marketing anyway, even if it's a traditional publisher.
Absolutely. Cool.
Yeah.
And then you do, your live, I know there's, looking over your like live workshop schedule, there's a couple of themes that come up over and over again, like fund your creative project, again, more the money marking aspect. And then what's your artist talk? What is that one about?
Right. So that's a workshop where I teach two different things. It kind of depends on how long that workshop is. But I basically teach artists how to talk about their work. It could be just in an elevator speech. I don't mean just in an elevator speech, but in a few sentence description of what they do that they would just give to somebody one-on-one. Or it could be, artists are asked to give more formal talks when they have shows. So how do I put together a 30 to 60 minute talk that's basically just me about my work? So that workshop leads you through either one or both of those processes.
Oh, cool.
So.
And you said that you're sort of like the live aspect, you like coaching or speaking in the workshop format, so I'm sure you've learned some things that you then pass on to other creative people.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because a lot of artists are, they're uncomfortable with a lot of things related to marketing. People in general are fearful, of course, of public speaking. Artists in particular are, worried about coming off as too schmaltzy or something when it comes to sales and marketing. And so, you and I know, have been dealing with that and speaking to artists about it for decades, probably.
Right.
And so, thank God we're out there letting them know that there is a better way. You don't have to be manipulative to sell yourself and to present yourself.
Well, the
to the
other
world.
thing I often say when I'm teaching that artist talk thing is I say, the truth is this talk is not about you.
Mm-hmm.
It's about your art. So, remember that. And often that direction helps people a lot. They're like, oh yeah, it's not about me. It's about the art. And all these, these people in the audience, they're not prisoners who were forced to come and sit there. They came because they wanted something.
Right.
So
unless you're speaking in a prison. Yeah.
Yeah. Unless you're speaking in a prison. Let's, give them what they came for.
That's it. Well, and what I take it a step further, and I tell, when people say, I just feel really uncomfortable talking about myself, I say, great, because it's really not about you. And it is about your art or your music or your book, but it's really what's in it for the other person. So you talk about the benefits to the other person, what they're going to get out of it, the thrill, whether it's going to inspire them or take them on a journey or whatever it is. That's where the focus is. It's not about you saying, look how cool I am. It's like how this thing that I created is going to benefit you, But there's an art, I guess, to that as well.
Yes, absolutely.
And I love what you said earlier about you. You used the word. You like to make people think about fundraising or their careers in a different way, and that's actually one of the biggest compliments that anybody could ever give me. Is that they read my music marketing books? They said, "Man, I now I think about this stuff in a different way." It's a whole mindset shift that's a huge factor in success, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It really is. People. It helps you, I think, stay more focused when you're making the work. You kind of remind yourself, "Oh yeah, this is this is the theme," or it forces you to pick a theme. I mean, just as an example, and then kind of stick with it. Because I think one thing artists have trouble with is, we're creative people and we have ideas constantly. And the artists I coach, I'd say 9 out of 10 of them, we sit down the first session and I say, okay, I want you to write down all the projects you're working on now. Oh my God, there's like 23 projects. Okay. What do you, and through a series of steps, I say, let's boil it down to just 3. Yeah. Okay. Let's just work on those. And the great thing about that is then you work on those and you realize, oh, the one that was number 1, I'm not really interested in that anymore. And that can get off the list and you can open up a whole lot of psychic energy and then move another one that you really want to do. So sometimes the narrowing process just really helps you expand in a great way.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that. Narrow it down to 3. There's a program that I launched that one of these days is going to be a book. But it was called "Get Important Stuff Done," and I did a series of videos on it, and where I encourage people to, even though you do a lot more than 3 things every day, you have 3 key priority things that you get, and they're not big things; they're small little steps, but 3 is a number you can wrap your brain around. It's big enough to really accomplish something, but not too much to overwhelm you. But yeah, you can pick 3 things for the month and then 3 things every day. But I just like the number 3.
Yes, 3 is good. It's not too many, but it's enough to keep it interesting.
Absolutely. All right, Gigi, I'm about to jump into those questions, but before I do, I know you've got a little something, for those people that are listening in the short term, you've got like a little raffle that they can enter to win something, and yet we're going to tell them how to do that at the end, so it's a little bit of an incentive to stick around, but go ahead and tell them what you're going to offer. So
I'm going to raffle off a copy of my book. I'll put it right here, The Artist's Guide to Grant Writing, and I'll give you the details about how to enter the raffle at the end of our time together.
Awesome. Oh, that's a little marketing tip there. Do a little tease there so they can force them to stick around. Not force them; they're going to be inspired anyway by the riveting content here. But all the more reason to hang in there. I always like to ask my guests kind of a same series of questions to pull out some of their, the factors that led to their success. And one thing I didn't mention earlier is, you've been full time as a coach and a writer and all this stuff. And how many years now have you been sort of self-sufficient doing this?
Gosh, I never know when to start it exactly. I guess it's from maybe around 2007 that it's been my main thing. What's that, 6 years or you do the math,
or so, yeah. And I've been self-employed at various points in my adult life, and in February of 2014 I will be celebrating 10 years since the last time I had any type of day job type of thing, so that's an exciting thing. So looking back then over these past 6 years and more that you've been at this stuff, if you had to identify 3 key factors that are responsible for your success, what would those be, Gigi?
The first one, and this is such a funny thing to say, but the first one was really kind of wrapping my head around the thought that I know what I'm doing. I finally got to the point where I thought, I know what I'm doing. And I think when you have like a job with, a boss and assistants and a team, which I've had before in the past, there's some way that whole structure gives you a sense of, I've got my desk and I've got my office and, at this company. So yes, I know what I'm doing. But I think when you go solo, and even though I have an office and it's in downtown Portland or whatever, and that's important, I think, too. But I think you need to really get to a place to be successful when you really just think, I know what I'm doing. Like doctors go to med school, they do internships, they do residencies, they do all this stuff to kind of, hopefully know what they're doing.
Right.
But I think when you're solo, sometimes you need to build those things in so that you can really get to the place, because that's, I think, where you need to be to really offer something of value, is to be in that place of I really know what I'm doing. And it takes a while, I think, to get into that psychological headspace. So I think that would be probably number one.
Okay, cool. And I was just going to say real quickly, there's a new book. I just released it on Amazon Kindle, or an early version of it, and you can get a free sample of it at DIYcareermanifesto.com. But in there, I talk about there's a section that's called "Avoid the credentials, or the exterior credentials crap trap." Is what I call it.
But that's exactly what I'm talking about.
But people need some sort of sometimes they need permission, they need a certification, they need a degree. I feel that they need that in order to be worthy. And so it's cool to pursue those things to hone your skills. There's nothing wrong with that. And
absolutely.
But when it's tied to your self-worth, and I don't think I'm worthy until I have these letters behind my name or something, then I think it's a mistake.
Right.
Because a lot of people, just people in general, but artists in particular, don't give themselves the credit that they really deserve.
Right. And, I coach a lot of artists who are thinking about going back for, first or even second masters. And I'm like, why? Mm-hmm. And, because a lot of the reasons they're going back is stuff they could build into their life right now. Well, I want to meet my community. Well, I want to connect with, blah, blah, blah. I want studio time. All those reasons, you've got to build those things into your life after you graduate anyway. Now, for some, going back for the master's may be the right thing, but I just, talk to them about whether that really is what they need to be doing, or do they really know enough now to just start, and build those things into their life now. So.
It's really like a balancing act, because on one hand, you do want to be a lifelong learner. You do always want to be constantly improving and realize there's growth. But on the other hand, you don't want to shortchange yourself. You want to feel, I'm confident. I deserve to do this. I deserve to get paid for it, without being cocky and still wanting to improve. So it's like that's a fine line to find that little space in the middle, right?
Absolutely. And you have to know, too, because some people are kind of like chronic workshop takers, you know what I mean? They just, the next one, the next one, the next one. And you just have to say, okay, enough. You've learned enough. You know enough right now.
It's time to do. So cool.
Yes, exactly.
So the first trait would be, you realized, you came to the point where you knew what you were doing or felt confident that you knew what you were doing.
I could move into that.
Cool.
Yeah.
What was another factor there?
The second one was, and it was really just, I love this. And what I mean by I love this is I love teaching. I love coaching. I loved writing the book. I just loved all those things so much. And it was just so exciting to be doing something that I just felt so, I don't know, just that I was kind of in my skin doing what I was meant to be doing. I love the part of teaching that's about performance. I love taking something that feels very daunting and complicated and horrible, like grant writing, and just breaking it down into these little steps that feel and are so doable. Yeah, I could research this one little thing. Oh, yes, I could answer this one little question. Oh, yes, I could do this little piece. So that part I found very challenging and fun. And, people walk into my classes, they're like, oh, this is going to be about grant writing, like the most boring thing. And they leave really inspired. Okay. And I just feel like it's like a personal challenge of mine. How can I take this kind of dreary subject and make people realize how it can feed their deepest creative impulses,
Yeah, it doesn't have to be so serious and so it doesn't have to be such a burden. I mean, it's
exactly.
a mental shift too.
Yeah,
that you
it
can
really
help
is.
them.
Yeah.
So what do you? So I know a lot of people talk about passion and loving what they do. But I'm just curious, to get your thoughts on this because I have some ideas about this whole concept. There's a book title, Marcia Sinitar, I think. Do what you love and the money will follow. But I don't know. I have some. What do you think of that general philosophy, though?
I mean, I like that thought. But I feel like it's kind of missing the end piece, which is do what you love, or maybe the middle piece. Find the people that want to buy what it is that you love doing. And then the money will follow.
Right.
So I feel like the reason I like it is it connects people to this thought that they can do what they love and make a living, which I think is true. But, I think you do need to connect to the marketplace, and you do need to think about who wants this, whatever it is, no matter what you're doing. So I think it's like a great first thought, but I just feel it needs to be carried, a little bit further than just that. But I like simple.
Yeah, that's my same thing. Yeah, because simply being passionate about something or loving something does not mean people will be lining up to pay you for that. So it's like, where's the overlap between that passion and a need or a want in the world, I guess, is where the sweet spot of making a living is. So cool. So loving what you do, and there's a third one, I assume?
There's a third one, and the third one it's kind of a two-part one. I think everything in life can be broken down into tiny steps. So kind of realizing, oh my God, I'm not gonna write this book in a day, It can all be broken down into tiny steps. And the other piece of that is I don't have to know it all the time, Like, I wanted to write a book, but I needed an editor, and the editor is going to help you make it an even better book. And, I want it to be beautifully designed, but that doesn't mean I have to go to design school and learn how to be a graphic designer. There's going to be someone who's going to do that. So just that you're not doing it all alone. There's so many people you can bring into the process. And even in the beginning, when I was just starting to write it, having my circle of reader friends reading and giving me comments back, it's not a journey that you do really by yourself. And it is just teeny little steps with help. And it's like, oh, life is teeny little steps with help? Okay, wow. I can do that.
I like that. Phrase, teeny little steps with help.
Who can't do that?
It's a nice little mantra. Yeah, and even though I'm a big proponent of indie, and I'm definitely like that book, DIY, Career Manifesto, DIY stands for do it yourself, but I make it clear that it's not about doing it all alone, all totally by yourself. To me, the journey starts with you. You have to make the decision. You have to, hone your skills and build the confidence and all that stuff. But then, you have to play with a lot of others, not only to help you create the craft, but also your fans and your customers or whatever.
Absolutely.
And so the tiny steps with help thing definitely applies to a book project, but I assume other areas of your career too, the coaching and the workshops and all that.
Everything, absolutely everything. The night before I do a workshop or a talk, I'm usually nervous, and it's like I'm just like imagining the whole talk at once, sort of. But if I just say, no, I'm going to, I'm getting ready tonight and I'm going to pack my bag in the morning and then I'm going to get in the car and then I'm going to drive there and then I'm going to get there and then I'm going to say hi to people, you realize that life, this is the great thing about time, things don't happen all at once. They first you do this, then you do that. And then I feel that, okay, that's doable. I can get in the car and drive there. I can get out of the car. I can walk in.
Right.
The tiny steps piece is crucial.
It seems like there's another balancing act. There's a theme I keep coming back to a lot. It's like simultaneously being on opposite ends of the extreme. On one hand, you want to have the vision for the finished project and have a little sense of impatience on let's get this moving, and I want this to happen sooner rather than later. But at the same time, having the patience to take the steps and stick with it and be somewhat disciplined.
That's exactly what I work with on coaching people. It's so funny. It's those two ends. It's the end of here's the big vision. Mm-hmm. And then it's the other end of, and here's the mundane, stuff you have to do to get there. And some of it's interesting, but a lot of it's boring,
Right.
So it's holding those two things together. That's really the key.
Because if you live on one end of that spectrum or the other exclusively, then it leads to stagnation because you're only in the vision. You're not going to be taking
you're not doing anything.
The steps.
Yeah.
And if you're only stuck in the muck, if you will, of what's happening now,
you won't be moving forward.
Yeah, there's nothing to excite you to. Yeah. So it's a brilliant advice here. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
So great. Those are some awesome 3 keys to your success and, actually factors that any artist can use to apply to their own lives. So now let's talk a little bit about challenges. So, we all have hurdles and obstacles that we face. So can you cite a specific challenge in your own career and let me share how you overcame it and what you learned from that experience?
Yeah, I guess there's 2 that I'm thinking of that are exactly the same thing. What's interesting about them is one happened a while ago and one's happening right now. Which is the first challenge was I was teaching my workshops and I really felt like I wanted people to have a book they could take with them. So the thought of writing a book was completely overwhelming. I thought, how am I going to get all this material into a book? So what I did is I sat down with this, gigantic, piece of paper and I got everything in my head onto the paper in terms of the topics that I wanted to write about. That helped me organize it. And then from there, I was able to kind of make a calendar of like, okay, these are, 12 pieces of chapters. Maybe these are chapters, I don't even know, but let's just call them 12 things I'm going to focus on. Maybe if I wrote one, I was actually meeting with a writing group then. So I broke it down so that I was bringing them 1 chapter per week. And what I told myself was it could be a really badly written chapter, but it had to be done,
right.
Which was great. So really lowered the bar on that. And then I just made sure that at the right moments, I got the right help. So I'd read the chapter to my group. They'd give me comments. Then somehow when I went, rewriting was less emotional for me. Once it's down on paper, I'm like, okay, I can fix this, even if it's awful. And then I was able to do that. So I guess it's that lesson of breaking things down and then getting people to help you with those little pieces.
Which harkens back to my little phrase there. Yeah, tiny steps with help. And so that will often get you through those, especially those daunting tasks, those overwhelming things like whether it's redesign the website or or to start a website to begin with, if you want to have one or whatever it is, or go in a new actually, I'm experiencing that now, going in a new direction with my career after 2 decades of being almost solely focused on music marketing. I'm expanding with this interview series. I'm still just a few months into it, and so that's kind of a scary thing, and I just chip away at it, one interview at a time, and I got the early version of the book out, and so I'm just chipping away at it myself. You made a reference to another thing that's happening currently now that's in the challenge category.
Well, now I'm working on a book, and I'm in the kind of the writing it all out and figuring what it is. And this is a creative project. It's not a how-to book. And I feel like I've got to remind myself every day, in a way, when I'm doing the mundane stuff of the writing, don't worry about the big vision. Just finish this 1 chapter. It's so interesting how you've got to almost get in this different mindset. And then when I'm applying for grants for myself to support this, this creative project, then I'm all about the big vision of the book, what it means, So it's really, but again, it's all about not just doing, I'm just going to work on this one question for the grant, for the next 20 minutes.
Yeah.
That's all I'm going to do. Just really staying focused on what's right in front of you.
I guess it's having the ability to go from the macro to the micro.
To the micro, yeah.
But artists are supposed to be sort of, fluid, flexible thinkers. So but even for us creative types, we get kind of stuck in a mental rut, and have to.
I think so. Yeah.
Cool,
Yeah.
cool. Well, that's great advice. Let's go ahead and go into another. This is kind of an interesting question that or it's actually a 3-part question. And this is if you could go back and have a conversation with your younger self, and you can pick the age, whether it was 6 years ago or much earlier or whatever. And if you can give yourself 3 pieces of advice, I'll just list them real quickly, and then we'll kind of hit them one at a time. It's basically going back and talking to your younger self. What would you advise that you do exactly the same? Because these things worked, and they're the smart things to do. The other question is, what would you avoid completely, like they were time wasters and you were misguided in thinking you should do those things? And then 3, what are the good things that you didn't realize at the time, but you should have done them earlier because they were really would have benefited you to bring them in. So let's start with that first one. What would you do exactly the same?
Well, I kind of answered these in a little bit of a different way. When I was thinking about what would I do exactly the same, I don't know if this is a good answer or not, but I'm going to say it anyway.
Go for it.
I spent a lot of time worrying that I wasn't on the right path, constantly looking at the other path, oh, is that where I should be? Is that where I should be?
Right.
Running back and forth. And what I would say to my younger self is, you don't know now how it's all making sense, but it is.
Right.
So in a way, it's saying I couldn't see the macro at times. I'd be like, well, I want to do this, but how does this fit with the big picture? Who knows,
Right.
So I would just say, in a way, that's kind of a funny piece of advice because maybe somebody is on the wrong path. I don't know. But I know for me, and, everything I was doing, even though it seemed like, oh, I'm doing some theater. Oh, I'm doing some writing. Oh, I'm doing, some psychological work, whatever. It was all, there wasn't kind of a moment that was wasted, even though at the time I was full at times of doubt. Like, I don't know, maybe I should go look elsewhere,
I totally relate to that. I've actually told the story. It's so funny, the overlap here. But there was a period in my life, in my 20s and 30s, where I was like, anything that was creative that seemed like it'd be fun, I did it. I played in rock bands, I did theater, I did stand-up comedy, I did improvisational comedy.
Oh, I can totally see that.
I would thank you very much, even though I don't know how funny I am in these interviews. But and then artwork, I mentioned that. And then there was a 5-year period where I hosted like this local cable music show. I published a local music newspaper, and so. But the problem, one of the issues was I was having a blast. I was creatively fulfilled, but I was spreading myself so thin that no one thing was gaining traction enough to make enough money, and so I was always struggling, you know. And so I finally decided to focus on the writing and the books, and music marketing was my topic, and that eventually paid off. But it's funny looking back on it now, even though I was like, why am I doing all this stuff other than just for fun? All of those skills I'm using now, like when I do interviews like this, I'm comfortable looking into a camera and speaking because I did all those video shows. I've done the stage stuff, I know the improv. I can kind of, think on my feet and be off the cuff, and that comes in handy in my own workshops and all that. So you use it all. So nothing, like you said, nothing is wasted, right?
Right. Yeah, that's it. I totally feel that way. The other thing is for me is like, how could I be an artist coach if I hadn't had some, road time? Do you know what I mean? Right. I'm still an artist now, but you can't start it. Who knows? Maybe you can. I couldn't have started. Hey, I'm 16 and I am an artist coach. So
right, you had it. So it's like almost like I guess that advice that you give to your younger self is like trust the path that you're on, and that all makes sense eventually.
It's all going to make sense eventually. Yeah.
Cool. So what?
So let's see. The other thing you talked about, things to avoid. I think what it really is, and I'm still working on this one. It's to avoid people and situations that drain you, where you walk away and just feel like, wow, I feel like I need a blood transfusion now.
Call energy vampires, I think, sometimes.
Yes, energy vampires, yeah. And I just wish that there were times when I had trusted my gut a little more, for sometimes when you think, gee, this this all logically sounds like it's a good idea, but kind of the vibe I'm getting is this is just not going to work out. And then, when you're younger, you go, okay, well, let's try it. And then it's such a disaster. And you think, oh, I knew at the beginning, that this was not going to be a good partnership or whatever. I'm not talking about anything major, but just collaborators. And I don't even mean choosing people that you don't have conflict with, because conflict can be very, very, it can make great things. You don't want an editor who reads your material and said, oh, I love this all. You want someone who's going to challenge you and say, I didn't get what you mean here. And you want to, being pissed off at your editor can be a really good thing. So I don't mean that, but just situations and people that you leave and you just feel,
yeah,
totally
especially when you feel like you need them, like especially when you're in that exterior mode of, I need to get the attention of a gatekeeper or a gallery owner or an editor or whatever to deem me worthy, and they're willing to work with you, but you sense that there's something not
right,
vibrationally there's not a match. And when you're younger, I guess you're going, oh, I'll just kind of suck it up and work with this person because I need them.
Right.
Whereas later you go, what? I'll find another opportunity with somebody.
Exactly. If it's not good, it's not good.
Right. Right.
So,
cool.
Yeah.
That's great advice. And how about anything you do earlier? It was maybe...
Yeah. You know what it is? It's one word. It's exercise. I'm not kidding. When you get older, you realize you've got to exercise or else you can't move,
Right.
So I would just have started younger just so I'd be more limber now.
I hear you. Especially when you have jobs where you're sitting a lot, like writers.
Yes.
I'm on the computer a lot. You know what I started recently, just like in the past week or so, and I have to remind myself every day to do this, but there's this thing called the Pomodoro technique where you set a timer and you spend like 25 minutes fully engaged in a specific thing that you have deemed I'm only going to do this for this 25 minutes, and then the timer goes off and you get up and walk and do something else for 5 minutes, and then you come back and do another 25. So that
oh my God, I love that. I kind of try to do something like that, but a little less, like taking a little stretch break every 30 minutes. But I love that 25-5 because that's great. It has a name, Pomodoro.
Yeah, it's a guy or somebody. Look that up. Pomodoro.
I'm gonna write
technique.
that down.
I know it's on Wikipedia somewhere, but because I know if without a timer, I can sit for 3 hours and not get up at all. Then you stand up like, oh, what happened to my? my knees.
I know.
So
you got to keep moving.
So cool. So and plus, even though it's not a part of marketing or an artist's career necessarily, but it
is. If you don't have your body, you don't have anything.
Having the energy, having the creativity, being physically fit is a huge, huge asset to anyone, especially artists who need to think sharp.
Right.
All right. Exactly. All right, great, Gigi. So, we're both authors. I assume we're both readers, and we've been inspired and touched by books over the years. I know that I certainly have. So if you were to name just one book that maybe even changed your life or influenced you significantly, what book would that be? And tell us the story behind that.
I was hoping that it would be some incredible novel, like, War and Peace or something. But when I really thought about what book really changed my life, one just came up very, very clearly. And it was written by a woman named Pema Chodron. She's an American Buddhist nun.
I've heard of her,
yes. And the book is When Things Fall Apart. If I, we're going to be on a deserted island, and I can only take one book, that's probably, or one of her other books, I would take her writings with me. I just feel they speak to the deepest, it's all Buddhist teachings, but what's so great about her is because she's American, she's able to translate it so well into our, American culture. And, it basically comes down to acceptance and acknowledging that, life is as depressing as this sounds, life is loss. And in a way, once you can kind of own up to all the loss that's involved with living, in a way, then you can really maybe be happy that, you're not always trying to avoid what is real,
Right.
So I really love her writings, and really I go back to them time and time again. And she does a lot of audio recordings as well, and I listen to a lot of those from time to time as well. So
Cool.
that is the one book. Yeah, yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I've heard some of her audios. I haven't read any of her books, but it's funny. Yeah, another one that's come up once or twice is Byron Katie, "Loving What Is." It's another book. It's basically about. It sounds like a similar type of thing where you sort of have to accept the good and the bad with life, and if you stop maybe resisting so much the stuff
Right.
that you don't like, you can relax more into, your true path or whatever.
Right, right. I think that's totally true.
Awesome,
Yeah.
awesome. Well, let's go into we're heading to the stretch here. But so this is kind of a basic question. I'm sure we've already touched on it, but just in case we had, I made this a separate question. I think it's an important one. So what truly motivates you to do what you do? I'm assuming it's not just to get accolades or to sell X number of copies of books or whatever. I'm sure there's a deeper meaning, which I think is important for every artist to discover. So what is that big why? What truly motivates you to do the things that you do?
I think for me, and this is about all my work, it's the coaching, it's the teaching, and it's the writing, the creative writing. It's really about finding that connection. Mm-hmm. And when I'm coaching somebody, to be able to relate to them where they are and show them some other way, but there's that connection there. And if I don't have that connection with somebody, then I'm probably not definitely not a good coach for them. Mm-hmm. And in the teaching, there's that connection. And really in my writing, there's writing about something where somebody else can say, oh, that happened to me too. I know exactly what you mean. And in a way, I feel like that's the kind of friends I want to have, people that get me and who I get them. And it's all about feeling, that connection with another human being. So I think that really is what motivates me in absolutely all areas of my life.
Yeah, and I've often said, I talk about the value that you deliver through your books or music or whatever, and I know from an author's standpoint, there are many ways you can impact people. One is somebody comes away feeling like, oh, I learned something that I didn't know, or I'm thinking about this in a different way, or I'm inspired. But there is this essence that I've also mentioned in this long list, which is, wow, here's somebody I can relate to, or this person's been through the same thing that I have, and that is comforting in many ways when you can do that. So that kind of touches on, I guess, a little bit of what you just said.
Yeah,
there.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
So that's an important thing for others to know they're not alone. That other people have been through the same things. So we've talked about your past a lot, but what about the future? We're always evolving and growing as entrepreneurs and artists. And so what's some of your big plans for the future?
So a couple things is about, let's see, I guess a couple of months ago, I started to I made a commitment that I was going to write a weekly blog. So, and I've been doing that, and I was a little bit afraid of it because as a writer, I don't like putting writing out there's no way I'm going to write something and then just publish it like 3 seconds later. So, but I've been taking the week to kind of write my very short little blog. So I'll do some rough drafts and then by Friday finish it. And I have really, really loved that. And it's given me a way to take little tips and pieces and just put them right out there. Because that's the thing about publishing is, I have this great, cool idea for something. And if I'm going to go in a book, that might take it a few years to get out in the world. So the blog, that kind of blog stuff, I want to keep growing. And I am working on this big, major creative writing piece right now. And I'm always fine-tuning my coaching. So I guess, what it is? There's nothing, like, I'm not going to be starting a new division of my company. You know what I mean? But it's doing all the things I'm doing now, just doing them better and hopefully bigger, And as you know, with marketing, it's just the maintenance of marketing is, that's, so it's going to be, I guess, in a really good maintenance mode for a while, but which means tending what's already been planted, and stuff like that. But I'm not going to be like putting a whole new garden or anything.
There's not a whole new thing. Yeah, just doing I just had a new book title come to mind. How about Zen and the Art of Marketing Maintenance? But you're right. You have to, because marketing is not just something that you have to, you get the ball rolling, but you have to maintain it and feed it and water it and all that good stuff. And so that's a good good piece of advice. Okay, I think we finally come to the part where we can reveal the details of this raffle thing, and that'll tie into where people can find out more about you. I have a feeling. And
Yes,
so
absolutely.
tell us the details
Yes.
of where they can go. And
So, like I said, I'm going to raffle off a copy of my book, which is The Artist's Guide to Grant Writing. And the way to enter the raffle is to go to my website, which is gigirosenberg.com. So it's just GIGIROSENBERG.com.
Right.
And on every page of the website, there's a little place to sign up for my newsletter. And when you sign up for the newsletter, they ask you your name, first name, last name, the city, and the state. So to enter the raffle in the city place, so like I live in Portland, so I wouldn't write Portland. Instead of Portland, I would write Bob.
Right.
B-O-B for Bob Baker.
Bob or Bob Baker, yes.
Bob or Bob Baker. So
Okay.
all the people who and so the deadline to do this will be by Halloween, so October 31st of 2013.
Right. So you'll should have 3 or 4 weeks at least by the time
Yes.
this is released. And so then you'll be able to sift those names out, and you'll randomly pick one person, and they will
Exactly. And then I'll email them and get their address, and I'll mail them a copy of the book.
That is awesome. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. And if I like to think these interviews will be timeless and be around for a long time. So if you happen to be listening after that date, still go to Gigi's website and sign up for the newsletter and check out all the good stuff. It's still a good reason to go there. And so that's your main home on the web, where you like to go any place else. Or they can connect with you on Twitter.
I have a couple of Facebook pages. One is called The Artist's Guide to Grant Writing, and the other one is called Gigi Rosenberg, Author and Coach. So I post a lot of fundraising ideas and all kinds of tips there on Facebook. And I'm also on LinkedIn. I haven't entered Twitter universe yet. I have a Twitter thing, but I'm not really using it to its capacity right now. So it's really the web, the blog, the newsletter that you can sign up for, and then the Facebook page.
Awesome. And it sounds like you got a kind of an active travel schedule here. I know you're going to be doing workshops in looks like Chicago and San Francisco, New York, and then Portland is your hometown, which we established off camera, you might say, in Vancouver, which is up near that neck of the woods. So it looks like you do a little bit of traveling. So maybe if people don't live in your area, they can find you. Your schedule looks like it's always in the sidebar of your website.
Yeah.
So Gigi, this has been a really thrill to reconnect with you after
thanks
these
for
years.
reaching out.
You were just an awesome inspiration with a great story, and the sense of fun that you bring to this too, I think, is really refreshing. So I just want to thank you for bringing positivity to this. Like we said earlier, it can be such a burden for creative people to, I got to build my career and market myself, and it's hard not to feel lighter about it after talking to you or hearing you speak about it.
Good. Thank you.
So you're doing great work in the world. So I appreciate it, and thank you for taking the time or sharing your story.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Absolutely. So thanks. It's Bob Baker here. We've come to the end of this episode, but I'll be back probably next week with another great interview. So stay tuned, and so long for now.